Am I shocked that we lost at the City Ground, Nottingham? No, that's been a difficult venue for us, and that's a legit competitor to us now. Am I irritated? Absolutely, for a number of reasons, including the fact that we threw away 3 glorious gifts that were presented to us all within a short proximity to one another. And while everybody wanted to talk about one glaring refereeing mistake in that game, I saw 2 that nobody was talking about, and they preceded both of Forest's goals. Presented by the Villa Mad and equally irritated 24/7 services, let's dissect Forest 2, Villa 1. So nice to have you in the parlor, and I'll start with some sobering numbers, as that was Aston Villa's 4th consecutive Premier League away defeat. We are still winless in the Premier League following a Champions League fixture. Incredibly, in our Premier League history, that was the 25th time we have conceded a game-winning goal in the 90th minute or later. Only Spurs have allowed more in their history at 27. And that was also the first time we lost in our 3rd kit. Are you like me in getting to that stage where you hate losing more than you love winning? Like, I loved Tuesday, and I'm really enjoying our European campaigns. I hope we can consistently be in the Champions League and come up against the best clubs in the world. But it's becoming very evident to me and many that unless we bolster this squad or go injury-free for the rest of the year, then this year's Champions League campaign is going to hamstring our ability to get back into that competition next year, especially when there are probably 10 teams all pushing to get into what? Those 5 Champions League places? What a glorious past this club has, kind of similar to ours. That makes this a very historically significant venue as I welcome you to the Holy Trinity show, where I attempt to identify the 3 key issues or moments that defined Forest 2, Villa 1. I'm wearing my Henson Retro Classic top from the late 80s. It's my favorite kit, the kit of my youth, while Traveling Samir is decked out in a very sweet Henson track top. Division Retro has a pre-Christmas sale on right now, 20% off, and given all the great footage Samir provides throughout the season, I'm only too happy to share the promo code and a link to Division Retro in the description of this video. That promo code is Xmas20, lowercase. And Paul White sent a couple of clips as well, totally unsolicited. Paul, of course, manages the Villains on Tour Facebook page. The key numbers showed Villa creating no big chances in the game, while Forest buried 2 of their 3. Possession dead even, passing percentage high for both teams. Villa's accurate long ball success was quite obvious in this game as we switched play often and successfully. The extra stat was tackles won, and this was so one-sided. Unfortunately, a couple of those tackles won occurred in the lead-up to both of Forest's goals as we tried to carry the ball out of trouble. I had no problem with the team selection or the rotation from Tuesday because it was 4 days from Tuesday in Leipzig to Saturday at the City Ground. And as I predicted, Tyrone Mings was named to the starting 11, presumably with Chris Wood in mind, only for Mings to then have to withdraw in the warm-up through illness. And so not only are we losing our blocks, clearance, and aerial duel king, but now we're asking Pau Torres to step in at the very last minute and play after going 90 minutes on Tuesday and presumably expecting and maybe even looking forward to a rest. I'm also not surprised that Unai Emery went back to former Forest man Matt Cash to play on the right wing, which tells you everything you need to know about Jadon Philogene right now. But then when Ollie Watkins and Amadou Onana were ready to come into the game, I'm thinking this is the perfect situation. Here we have 2 fantastic aerial duelists who are relatively fresh because you know we were going to get an assault on our penalty area. And then Maatsen and Ross Barkley came on. I thought we are going to see this out for sure. From a wider perspective, the biggest issue on Saturday, and the boss said it himself, game management. We did not control the game when it mattered most. And that's our thing. That's what's been sold to us as fans. Villa's way. we control games. That first half was tight. Some called it boring. I say perfect. We're not there to entertain. Keep it close. Don't get into a bunch of transitional moments. Don't allow a lot of chances. And we obliged. In fact, we didn't expend a lot of energy either. I would have thought Forest would have shown more initiative than they did. Then we go and we get a goal out of nothing. And now the question becomes, do we grind this game out and see it through with loads of possession and control, or do we go chase a second goal? And Villa did neither. Keeping in the festive spirit, we received 3 glorious gifts, including one of the greatest saves of any Aston Villa goalkeeper in history by Martinez. 3 minutes later, John Duran scores another fantastic goal completely out of the blue and against the run of play. And then not long after, we get a VAR decision in our favor of the slimmest of margins, a hair's breadth. You'd think the boys in navy blue would have said, man, we've received 3 gifts. Let's take advantage and see this through. Now, having said all that, it's not always that one team was and chucked the game away. There is another team on the field that is not in 4th place by fluke, and that's an impressive atmosphere. It's one of the better atmospheres I think we've experienced over the last couple of years. The Premier League is a total horrible minefield right now, and the team that played on Tuesday did look like it was wilting and sagging a little bit, while the team that did not play on Tuesday just had that little extra bit of freshness about them, and sometimes that's the difference. That's not me making excuses. That's just the cold, hard reality of this year's Premier League. We had quite a windstorm here over the weekend, which coincided with king tides. So down the bay, as the tide is at its very highest, the wind is surging the water on shore, which left a lot of damage, flooding, trees down, power outages. Sadly, there isn't a Canadian division of 24/7 services. They recently had a reactive call out to the Worcester Shrub Hill station. They're contracted by Network Rail to do all sorts. This was just a repair job, but they have done complete and total roof replacements at working rail stations, like, for example, this one in beautiful, picturesque Wigan. But what sets 24/7 services apart is that they are not just about roofs, industrial or residential. I'm pulling this one out from the archives to demonstrate how dramatically and cost-effectively you can transform your kitchen using just new paint and new tile. You don't have to gut your galley down to the studs. But if you do, well, 24/7 can help with that as well. And now you're using your kitchen more and enjoying it for what its purpose is: hosting parties and cooking, not to mention increasing your property value in the process. By now, I think you know how to get in touch with the Villa-loving team in green, which includes Paul, Brad, and Jay. Major moments for me, and maybe I'm crazy because nobody talked about it during the game, on socials after, or on my feed with our pundits Danny Murphy and Karen Carney. And by the way, is there an illness going around England? Because first it's Tyrone Mings in warm-up going down, but if Danny Murphy is working as a television pundit, then clearly everybody else must be ill. Anyway, prior to both of Forest's goals, there were clear and obvious offside situations, and I'm genuinely curious as to how this law is being enforced. When does an assistant put the flag up? When does he keep it down? It is not clear anymore. I really don't want to sound like I'm whinging and moaning here, but I am very curious as to how and when the law is applied. Just prior to the corner, which precedes the 1-1 goal, the ball is played towards Chris Wood, and he is in an offside position. He's behind Pau Torres, who is forced to flick the ball over the byline and concede a corner. Torres immediately looks over to the assistant referee and says, well, where's the flag here? Because he was behind me in an offside position, and now I'm having to defend a corner. So in essence, Wood is gaining an advantage by being in an offside position. He is benefiting from it. The ball is clearly played in his direction with the idea of him getting on the end of it and scoring. And so instead of us having a free kick there, they get a corner, and heaven knows They did a lot with their corners. They caused chaos on virtually every single one. If only we could cause that much chaos from the quadrant. But you know what I'm saying? Instead, Pau Torres is forced to head the ball away and concede a corner. Is that the spirit of how the law was written, that you can be in an offside position and gain a corner out of it? Because from my view, even on the TV angle, perhaps I'm blind, it sure looks to me like Wood is the closest, most forward player to goal. But the referees are told, don't put your flag up because it's close. I don't think that's how the law was intended. Even more egregious, though, was the initial entry into Aston Villa's half prior to the game-winning goal. Look at Jota Silva. When the ball is played, he is a mile offside. And by the way, Jota Silva is what you get when you order Jack Grealish on Temu. But tell me, the referee's assistant is in perfect line with this. Why does the flag not go up here? Because a minute later, Ilanga scores. Now, in the meantime, Villa had 2 opportunities to clear their lines. There were 2 changes of possession. So presumably VAR can't go back that far into the initial entry. But I simply do not understand why in this situation, the flag does not go up. Big wasted moment. Duran's dart. The City ground is home to the fewest Premier League goals of any ground in the league. So if you get a goal there, there's a pretty good chance you're going to hang on to that lead and win the game. And when we did manage to conjure up something out of nothing, I can't blame a lot of Villa fans for justifiably and foolishly starting to do some table gazing. And I also marveled at the fact that John Duran finds new ways to make goalkeepers look silly. I'm convinced he was wheeling away to celebrate before the ball actually hit the net, like a 21st birthday present to the rest of us. Super John McGinn had another combative game, playing either on the left or at times drifting infield into the pocket. He earned us a lot of fouls with great body position or by sprinting away from an opponent. He even had time for a piggyback race in this game. But in minute 63, first he and Luca Dean combine, and then McGinn fizzes across the perfect ball, and John Duran simply cannot stop scoring. He has scored in every start this season, and that's now 3 consecutive, and this had a very Southampton-ish game-winning goal type feel to it. Big moment number 3, the penalty shout. Our young referee, Sam Barrett, is one of the up-and-comers who is certainly taking over some of the minutes vacated by the sacked David Coote. And Mr. Barrett was more than happy to let an awful lot go in that game. And I have no problem with that, so long as that is consistent from minutes 1 through 90 and not suddenly selective. And I do kind of wonder why maybe he's decided to let things go in this game, whereas across the street, the standard is completely different. What is the standard? But just before minute number 34, Mr. Barrett also waved off what sure looked to me like a stone-cold penalty. My first instinct in real time was penalty. Watching it again in slow motion made it seem as though Elliot Anderson was trying to dislodge Rodgers' arm from his torso. And the only thing that probably, in the referee's eyes, prevented this from being a cast-iron stone-cold penalty was the fact that Rodgers didn't tumble immediately. He sort of went down in installments. But still, that should not excuse the fact that the player's arm was being deliberately pulled back to prevent his progress while in the box. Even Unai Emery, who is loath to criticize officials, said after seeing it, he realized it was a big mistake by VAR.
But after I watch, it's penalty clear. And that's a mistake for the VAR. Today the VAR is a big mistake because this is clearly, he was with advantage, clearly like that. Please.
Now, we may not have gone on to convert the spot kick, and it was early enough in the game that Forest could have still recovered and even gone on to win the game. But you cannot discount the importance of a first goal, and goals change games. And we were denied the opportunity to get one. Every pundit that I saw on my feed said stone cold penalty. And had Mr. Barrett pointed to the spot there, well, VAR is not overturning it because there's no clear and obvious error. And this, to me, is the gray area area in this process. But for VAR John Brooks to characterize that moment as fleeting contact in the box, that's going to require some Howard Webb explanations. Maybe Mr. Brooks should have a fleeting contract if that's the case, because the characterization I get is scandalous. Big moment number 2, magnificent Martinez. This was the greatest save by an Aston Villa goalkeeper probably since Ørjan Nyland in 2020 against Sheffield United. How he managed to react so quickly. Well, this is as good as a goal in my books. I mean, first to react, then to not get so much contact that there's a rebound, but enough that it's not a goal. It is simply incredible and has to be a finalist already for the Premier League save of the season. And sadly, it was wasted. That save was worthy of a clean sheet all by itself. Here's why I stay off the socials after games, but I actually read people blame Martinez for allowing the 1-1 goal that he should have had it. I mean, are you kidding me? Talk about distorted reality and needing to give your head a shake. He just made a world-class save. He'll be the most gutted person on the planet that he just didn't swat the ball away rather than trying to catch it. But if we're expecting our goalkeeper to save that from the doorstep where Forest score a lot of goals, then holy smokes. Maybe we need to try to prevent the opponent from getting into those situations in the first place rather than blaming our goalkeeper for not making that save. And the number 1 big issue that defined Forest 2, Villa 1, double jeopardy. On top of the non-offside decisions prior to both goals, if we were to wind back what happened prior to the 1-1 goal in the corner all the way to the change of possession, you would see similar themes as to what we've been seeing kind of all season long. A hopeful and kind of aimless 50-50 ball, a striker not holding the ball up once and then twice, a lost duel, maybe not a foul taken, and worst of all, and what frustrates me the most, is when players try to get out of trouble through dribbling when they have easy passing options on either side of them. And there were just so many examples of this. And for how long have I been saying that this is Morgan Rogers taking it one step too far? Well, pretty much since his contract extension, which is a bit odd. And now that I'm back coaching little kids every day, I am constantly drilling into them a very basic principle. The ball is faster than any player, and it never gets tired. The energy the player should be putting in is getting into supporting positions on either side of the ball, not taking the ball and running it to a teammate. That makes no sense. And Aston Villa is more than capable, because it's their thing, controlling games, of running a possession type drill during a game, playing keep away, forwards, backwards, side to side, force the opponent to chase the ball all over the park for minutes at a time. On the 1-1 goal from the corner, we actually got to this ball first and cleared it away, but there was nobody in the neighborhood to put pressure on the ball and maybe even counterattack, because we were sitting very deep, which is always a bit dangerous. And here's where we really could have used Tyrone Mings, because there are 10 Aston Villa players in the penalty area. All of them are facing their own goal. None of them are marking the eventual goal scorer. Boubacar Kamara was closest, and he's capable of winning an aerial duel, but he's in no position. And for some reason, Carlos and Konza are marking each other, while the tallest man on the park, Amadou Onana, is not marking anybody. Was this mental and physical fatigue at the end of the game? Was it poor game management? Was it bad defending? Was it a great, awful ball played across that caused chaos? It was all of the above. If you wind the 2-1 goal back 90 seconds, you will see so many examples of terrible control of the football, starting with Ollie Watkins, who plays a square ball towards the top of the box. And that's a fundamental no-no, an east to west ball that's asking to be cut out, but we somehow get it back. First through Ezri Konza, and then through Matt Cash. And what does Cash try to do? He tries to run with it when he has Morgan Rogers standing a couple of yards to his left. Play that ball. And this is just before the ball that was played to Jota Silva, who was a mile offside. But later in the sequence, we had two brilliant opportunities to either clear or just deal with the ball because Forrest just gave it back to us. First Carlos, then Konza. Both tried to play it to Matty Cash. Bad idea. Often we'll try to play it infield to our two holding midfielders who are normally available, but this is where maybe Matt Cash playing slightly out of position was a problem. And then after that, we just didn't deal with the ball when it was on the sides of our penalty area. This was happening all afternoon, and we struggled with it. I don't know if Ilanga was Ian Matson's man, but he was a split second too late. And when Forrest makes it look that easy for basically a tap-in, people will scream, "That's terrible defending." My reaction to that is, not every single goal comes down to bad defending. Do you know sometimes the team with the ball does really good work, like Forrest did, putting us under pressure and being effective with it? But you hear that all the time. That's terrible defending, usually by pundits who are ex-defenders, self-important. Here's an idea. How about not putting your defenders in a position to have to panic defend at the end of a game by doing better work down at the other end of the park? Just a thought. And the consequence of those 5 minutes, we could have been in fourth place this weekend. Now we're playing a Manchester City team that is trying to stay in the Champions League neighborhood on the back of some terrible performances. We could have been going into that game with some momentum and confidence. And by the way, there's a lot of teams looking to move into that Champions League neighborhood, and I'm fearful there's going to be another one soon by the name of Manchester United. The Sill Hill Brewery star performer is Boubacar Kamara, and it is becoming plain to me that Boubacar Kamara is getting back to his very best. In fact, he might be exceeding some of his levels even from last year. He had a 97% pass completion percentage on Saturday. That's 56 out of 58 passes, and he played 7 balls into the final third. He's not just a defensive midfielder, but the real big question about Bouba is, what do you prefer? Braided Bouba or bouncy Bouba? That's almost as hard a question to answer as Sill Hill Gold Star Ale or Sill Hill Blonde Star Ale, and there's only one way to make that determination, and that's visiting the tap room in Aston, maybe before the Manchester City game on Saturday. By the way, early kickoff. And isn't Neil Rioch appearing for a meet and greet afterwards? The brewery just hosted its first charity Christmas fair with great success and proceeds to a local food bank. These guys are doing great things, and I would deeply appreciate it if you supported them, because if you do, you are also supporting this show in the process. We started the season by being brilliant on the road, but that's now 4 road losses in a row in the Premier League, despite us scoring first in this game and John Duran adding to the combined strikers tally. We also got a VAR decision in our favor, but should have had 2 and a penalty. And boy, do we like scoring and conceding late goals. Now, though, Villa is in the negative ledger in those final 15 minutes, which of course is skewed somewhat because of added time. The visit by Man City last year had to be our performance of the season. Maybe not the result. I think that was the trip to Arsenal later in the year because of the implications of it. But we swarmed them. We suffocated them. It was a tactical masterclass. They were without Rodri that day, along with Grealish and De Bruyne. And they're not with Rodri now. And their record without him is astonishing. And it has been shocking to watch. You know, and maybe selling Julian Alvarez without really replacing him might have been a bigger problem than they thought at the time, because nobody's pushing Erling Haaland and they're not getting the scoring off the bench. I could not believe watching the catastrophic late collapse in the Manchester derby on Sunday. I mean, it was quite something. Incredibly, Manchester City have 1 win in their last 11 games, all competitions. And ironically, that came against Nottingham Forest at home, 3-0. It's the way they've been chucking games away that is truly astonishing, like the one at home to Feyenoord, and then on Sunday, they look fragile, they look vulnerable, they don't look as sharp going forward, and that terrifies me, because you know that trend is not going to last forever. We've all seen pre-Christmas City suddenly turn into title-winning Manchester City, and we need to strike while the iron is hot, and if we beat them on Saturday, we'll leapfrog them in the table. I think it's really important that Villa has almost a full week to prepare for this game on Saturday and maybe look at some of the issues and trends and themes that have been creeping into the team over the course of the season. Not to mention they could take a very deep dive and explore why Manchester City is such a wounded animal right now and where they are vulnerable. And needless to say, a great result on Saturday just takes us into Christmas on a high, because there is a horrible, difficult, and traditionally unwinnable fixture on the horizon in Newcastle on Boxing Day. Thank you as always for your ears, for your eyes, for your comments. I don't always reply to them, but I do read them, and I deeply appreciate it. And until the weekend, be well, and as always, up the mighty Villa!